So Mousa was born in the village of Aboud, and he says he spent many of his happiest times there. His family moved to Jordan and grew up there. He received his education in Terra Sancta School in Amman and the American University of Cairo, and graduated with a degree in materials engineering. He met his wife, Kristen Peterson Ishak, at AUC. They have lived in Vermont for 45 years.
47.
47.
Vermonters by choice.
Yes.
He retired from being a senior engineer and scientist at IBM for 35 years, and he is the chair of the Burlington Bethlehem Arad Sister City Program. His wife and he are members of the Ascension Lutheran Church, and that has a sister congregation relationship with the Christmas Lutheran Church in Bethlehem, Palestine. And Hamed lives in Fairfax with his wife, Patricia, and he has been a resident of Vermont since 1990. Hamed was born in Halazon and grew up in Ramallah, Palestine. He was telling us about the hills of Ramallah, the mountains there earlier. His parents were forcibly expelled by Zionist militias from their Abbasiyah near Haifa in May 1948 upon the destruction of Palestine and the founding of Israel. Hamed received his university education in Jordan and completed his postgraduate studies in the UK, where he met his wife, Pat. He retired in 2021 from a senior leadership position in public health and the environment at the World Health Organization. His 35-year international career with the UN system took him to 36 countries, and he lived in 7 countries in East and North Africa, Middle East, and Europe. So Hamed, I think, is going to speak first.
Right.
Thank you so much.
Henry, did you want to play the 5 minute video?
Yes.
Start with
Yes.
that's the background video, if you, that would do.
So we also have just as kind of a short background, it's a video that gives some of the history, and it may not be the same as the narratives that you've necessarily heard. We were talking earlier about some of the things that the narratives are different, and if people have questions, we can probably do it at the end, and also Hamed and Mousa will talk a lot about the history as well. So we'll just play this first as a background.
You're going to play that one? Oh, yeah. Mike, we're working on the tech here. That's the
There's probably a volume.
oh yeah.
Is it what's about to sound?
Yeah, it's try that. It might be loud. Okay.
But instead it has served as a...
Sorry about that. Alden, I'll control.
Every June, Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank, including East Jerusalem, mark another year of living under Israel's brutal military occupation, now more than a half-century old. This occupation is characterized by the violent theft of Palestinian land and resources, racial profiling and targeting of civilians, mass incarceration and torture, and more. For decades, a supposed peace process has been ongoing to end this occupation, but instead it has served as a cover for Israel as it further entrenches its control over Palestinians and their land. The occupation and settlement of the West Bank and Gaza were never meant to be temporary. They are simply the latest iteration of Zionism, the settler colonial project being carried forward by the State of Israel. The Zionist movement that would come to found Israel sought to respond to European anti-Semitism by creating a Jewish nation-state in Palestine. Zionist leaders understood that a way to manufacture a Jewish majority was to remove the native Palestinian inhabitants and settle Jewish people in their place. Despite anti-Zionist campaigning by Palestinian leaders, the Zionist movement won support from Britain with the Balfour Declaration in 1917, triggering decades of fierce Palestinian resistance to the colonization of their homeland. This included international lobbying for independence from the British Empire and, in 1936, a massive popular mobilization that began as a general strike and would eventually become the armed uprising known as the Arab Revolt. Despite Palestinian resistance, in 1947 the UN recommended partitioning Palestine against the will of its native Palestinian population, and Zionist militias were emboldened to create a state by force, including through the ethnic cleansing of Palestine. In order to create the State of Israel with a Jewish majority on 78% of Palestine, Zionist forces depopulated and destroyed 500 Palestinian villages, and then denied 750,000 Palestinian refugees the right to return to their homes after the war ended. Today, more than 7 million Palestinian refugees live in exile, prevented from exercising their inalienable right to return to their homes simply because they are not Jewish. Meanwhile, Israeli law permits Jewish people from around the world to immigrate to that same land anytime they wish. Although they were eventually granted citizenship, Palestinians who remained in what became Israel lived under martial law and military rule for nearly 2 decades. Today, Palestinian citizens of Israel remain subject to a system built to structurally disadvantage them, with more than 50 laws that discriminate against them as non-Jews in a Jewish state. Israel's intentions are most clear when it comes to the Gaza Strip, where Palestinians are targeted by a suffocating siege, denied their basic needs for survival, including adequate food, clean water, and electricity, subjected to periodic heavy bombardment, and sealed off from the world, unable to escape. This is a humanitarian catastrophe deliberately manufactured and maintained by Israel. U.S. taxpayers are complicit in Israel's apartheid system through the billions of dollars in weapons that the U.S. gives Israel each year, about $10 million every day, and through the political and diplomatic support the U.S. provides in blocking international efforts to hold Israel accountable. After more than 100 years of Palestinian resistance to Zionist colonization, it is as urgent as ever to join the movement for freedom, justice, and equality for the Palestinian people.
All right.
Right. And if you just project my only slide that
Yes.
I wanted on.
The one and only slide.
It's the only one slide. Yeah.
Comment. I'm going to project the slide,
Oh,
but I'm not going to screen share. And so I'm going to have the people on Zoom watch. I'm going to point the camera towards them.
okay.
Because screen sharing is hard for me with a brain that is made of an ADHD problem.
Okay.
My brain doesn't work well.
Okay.
So I'm just going to keep the people up there. And,
Oh, okay.
And
It's all right.
I'll show you
Do
a
it
slide.
like- Just give it.
I'll show you a slide. I think I have it.
Yeah.
That's not it. Let's see. I've got it.
While he's doing that, well, good afternoon, and I just wanted to thank every one of you for showing up for this talk, to learn about what's happening in Palestine, especially these days. 14 months of genocide, 57 years of Israeli military occupation of the West Bank and Gaza, and 76 years of apartheid against the Palestinians. Your attendance here today is an act of solidarity with the Palestinians. Thank you so much for that. All the Palestinians want is a dignified life of equality for everyone who lives on the land of Palestine from the river and the sea. And that everybody who lives in there. And for that to happen, the Israeli occupation of the West Bank and Gaza has to be dismantled, and the Israeli apartheid against the Palestinians has to be dismantled. At times people ask, what do you feel like as a Palestinian these days? And I can say it feels like hell, if I am to say mildly. 400 years, as you saw in the video, Palestinians have had to go through very difficult lifetime. But nothing prepared us for what is happening in Gaza in terms of the atrocities and savagery that Israel is bringing upon the Palestinians. Nothing prepared us to watch a genocide for 13 months live by the people who are being destroyed and the people who are doing the destruction. And doing the destruction and live streaming their crimes on social media with their names and their faces and not afraid of accountability. Just another level of atrocity, another level of savagery that we are witnessing. You probably have seen the news. I mean, Israel has killed 47,000 Palestinians. 70% of them are women and children. And there are 12,000 people missing under the rubble. And there are 107,000 people who are injured. 50% of them are doomed to die because there is no treatment, as Israel destroyed most of the hospitals and killed about 1,250 doctors, nurses, and health workers. So healthcare basically is non-existent. But Israel turned Gaza into a killing zone for children. They've killed 17,500 children. 850 of them are under 1 year old. We've seen Israeli snipers target children, and we've seen Israeli drones killing children. 10 children are losing 1 or 2 limbs every day. They have forced the newborn babies in incubators to die alone in a Shifa hospital when they forced the Shifa hospital evacuation. Those children died alone, crying until they died. And then how would I feel when I watch a video of a 5-year-old child saying to his dad, who had lost both his arms, saying to his dad, "Dad, would my hands grow back when I grow up?" Just to break your heart. Israel destroyed 85% of Palestinian homes in Gaza and displaced 2 million people repeatedly under bombs. And when they moved, they hunted them. They dropped 2,000 bombs on tents and burned people alive. We've seen bodies mangled, and we've seen headless babies, and we've seen mass graves, and you've seen I can go on talking for a long time about what we've seen. But it's also Israel not only destroyed homes, but they destroyed everything in Gaza. The only 3 churches, all the mosques, all the 12 universities, 80% of the cropland, and 26 hospitals, and are repeatedly striking the remaining 12 hospitals. Imagine how it would feel if Vermont was under attack. Imagine how it would feel if 15,000 Vermonters got killed, including 5,700 children, of whom 260 are under 1. Just think about that for a minute and let it sink. The Gaza Strip is 69 times smaller than Vermont, but it's home to 2.3 million people. No place is safe in Gaza, and no one is safe in Gaza. Imagine as a Palestinian living in the West Bank, and the Israeli settlers and army erect billboards reading no future in Palestine. How would it feel? As Palestinians also we feel betrayed as the world allows it to happen. We thought, and I always argued, that the ethnic cleansing of Palestine in 1948 would have not happened in the era of social media. But it was totally wrong, and many of us feel betrayed that the world allows it to happen. It's live streamed for 14 months. We see it. We know it. It's not about knowing, it's about allowing it to happen. And yet there are people who are trying to justify the unjustifiable, and those who will say it's divisive to call for ceasefire. To those I ask, if preserving life is divisive, what is unifying? Is calling for death unifying? And there are those who say it's complicated, and there are two equal sides to this conflict. And to those I see, what is it you don't see? What is it you don't see? Imagine what it would feel when your friends and family tell you that we know what's happening in Gaza is coming to us in the West Bank, but there is no way we can do anything about it. Imagine when 96% of children in Gaza tell you that our death is imminent, and 50% of them say, I wish I died tomorrow, because I don't want to see what I saw. That's what it's like. But our subject today is about apartheid, and my friend Mousa will provide a deep dive into apartheid. It's the Israeli project that was conceptualized as an ethno-state for the Jewish people, and only the Jewish people, in Palestine. Palestine that had 1.2 million people, multi-ethnic, multi-religion people who lived in harmony for generations. And they spoke the same language, wore the same clothes, they looked alike, you couldn't distinguish who's Muslim, who's Christian, and who's a Jew. They carried the same names, they cared for olive trees, and they spoke the same language, like I said, celebrated the same values, intermarried, and danced to the same music. And if you test them for DNA, you probably found that they shared all the same DNA. Zionist leaders, like you saw in the video, knew very well that if you are to have a successful ethno-state in Palestine, you have to genocide the Palestinians by ethnically cleansing them or massacring them. And this is exactly how it played out. You saw in the video, they expelled 750,000 people from their homelands in 1948 for the creation of Israel, and in 1967 they expelled 380,000 other people, including the majority of my family, 99% of my relatives. But then Israel apartheid is founded on supremacy and dominance of the Jewish people, the Jewish Israelis over the Palestinians. It's a system of racialized laws, a system of segregation, segregated roads, segregated communities, violence, arbitrary detention, killing at will, checkpoints that restrict movement, land theft, and forced displacement. It's fracturing the Palestinian communities, turning them into ghettos. And every community has gated roads that can turn them into prison at will. At few minutes, you can turn any community into a prison. I was 8 years old in 1967 when Israel occupied the West Bank, and I grew up under apartheid. And I can tell you that my deep fear and hate of anything that looks military comes from that experience. It is decades of apartheid and dehumanization of the Palestinian that provided the context to this genocide that you see today. It's decades of dehumanization to the point where Israelis don't see Palestinians as people. They see them as a demographic threat, as an encumbrance that has to be removed. It's superiority, it's racism, it's sadism, it's loathing of the Palestinian that is so deeply ingrained and taught at a very young age. No wonder Israeli soldiers become willing executioners of children and celebrating their execution of children on social media. No wonder. In 1948, the world witnessed the birth of two apartheid systems, South Africa apartheid and the Israeli apartheid. And because apartheid is not compatible with humanity, and because nobody can extinguish people's strive for freedom, the South Africa apartheid only lasted until the early 1990. And the only remaining apartheid in the world is the Israeli apartheid. And it has to be dismantled. It's not compatible with the humanity. It's not compatible with history. But why Israel is emboldened to do what it's doing, the occupation, the genocide, and apartheid for so long, why is it so emboldened? It's because people gave Israel a pass, because of the identity of the perpetrators, because they are the victims of the Holocaust. The same victims who committed 3 years later the genocide against the Palestinians. 3 years later, when the world signed the Genocide Convention. And perhaps there is deep-seated, deep-rooted racism that we have inside in the Western world, that we look away and we don't want to acknowledge that racism, deeply rooted racism. Perhaps we need to look at it. Otherwise, how would you explain how we react to Ukraine as opposed to Palestine, what's happening in Palestine? Plus, Israel enjoys impunity that is afforded to it by the diplomatic cover that's provided by the US and by European countries, that it shields Israel from accountability, from international laws. Israel just breaks any possible international law with no accountability, with no consequences. And you know that our Congress actually gave 58 standing ovations to a war criminal who's wanted as a war criminal. And we know that the US supplies the weapons for the genocide in Gaza. We know they supplied 85,000 tons of explosives. That's translated into 38 kilograms per head. The US paid 70% of the cost of war in Gaza, and that's our tax money, and this number comes from research by Brown University. And we know that the corporate media whitewashes Israel's crimes and tries to justify them as legitimate self-defense. And we know that the Western countries, corporations, are providing support, economic support to Israel, keeps it going. And we, as individuals, might be actually complicit in that, because our investments, our portfolio, might include a lot of money that goes directly to supporting the Israeli apartheid. And we have to learn from history. And we have to learn from history. And people who write about the Nazis did not start with gas chambers. They started with dehumanizing the target groups. And they started with the mentally and physically disabled people. And then they progressed into the gas chambers because the word went silent. And I'm afraid the more we go silent about what Israel is doing, we're going to witness a lot more savagery, a lot more crimes. Finally, just on a positive note, I mean, things look very dark for the Palestinians these days when you see what's happening in Gaza and when you see the 100 years of pain. But there is so much hope, though, in this darkness. And that hope comes from several sources. One is that Palestinians for 100 years remained resilient, attached to their land and refused to be erased. And you see that's happening in Gaza. People refuse to leave and are resilient in their land. And their resilience comes from their love of their land, from community, and from love of life, celebration of life. That's where the strength comes from. And the other positive thing is that the world opinion has changed. Israel mask is down, and we see it for what it is now. It's a criminal entity, genocidal entity that's able to break every single humanitarian red line, every single red line that the humanity set up over the thousands of years. They're breaking them. That's what Israel now. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. And that's good for humanity, and it's good for Palestinians. The other thing is that youth, the young people of today, are not propagandized. They have not had their brains sort of propagandized like most of us here who grew up with a lot of propaganda. And they are searching for information, for the truth. And they are questioning what kind of world we are living in. And if it's allowed to happen to the Palestinian, who's going to be next? Because that's the more dangerous thing. And having the youth around both in the north, in the south, everywhere in the world, mobilized, that's inspiring. And that's a good source of hope. And also another good source of hope is the anti-Zionist Jewish community that's growing strong and strong and strong every day. And there's the Jewish Voice for Peace. And there is, for example, Israeli groups themselves are calling for the world to sanction Israel if we are to preserve Israel. Haaretz editor, and if you don't know Haaretz is a newspaper, a long time newspaper in Israel, mainstream newspaper, and the editor was speaking in London, and he called for sanctions against Israel to stop Israel's own destruction and to stop the genocide. In the newspaper, after his speech in London, the newspaper was sanctioned by the government of Israel. Palestine today is like the South Africa of 1980s and 90s. Today, Palestine has become a rallying call, and it has become the litmus test of morality and humanity. The corporate media and the political establishments have to reckon with people's power. No longer they can sell their propaganda. Ending the genocide and dismantling its root cause, which is the occupation and the apartheid, is not a matter of opinion, and it's not a matter of it's not a matter of opinion or political position you take. It's a matter of ethical responsibility and morality. It's about our desire for equality. It's about your support for justice, for equality, and for removal of harm. And we know 3 decades ago, apartheid South Africa ended, and it's ended because of everyone like us here sitting in this room mobilized for humanity, stood up for humanity and said no. And people spoke up, people protested, people boycotted, people sanctioned South Africa, and it was a long walk for justice. But at the end of the day, apartheid South Africa had to be dismantled, and it did. And the global solidarity at that time was the answer, and it's the answer today for ending the Israeli apartheid against the Palestinians.
I have the slide up.
Okay.
So it's not
So
what you
I
have.
will refer to that.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Yeah. So I want you to know, and you probably have seen, that Palestinians are watching the world, especially the people in Gaza. When the students were out in protest last spring, Palestinians in Gaza wrote on their tents that we hear your voices louder than the Israeli bombs raining on us. So they gain strength from your support. And we must have faith that humanity will win and justice will prevail. And we know it's a long walk for justice, but every single one of us can do, and single one of us can do things no matter how small, because what we do here is part of a community and part of the global movement, the anti-apartheid global movement that will end the Israeli apartheid against the Palestinians. And your solidarity, please channel your solidarity into meaningful action that can make a difference, no matter how small it is. And your presence here to learn about what's happening in Palestine is an act of solidarity. And you can seek the truth and talk about Palestine, amplify the Palestinian voices, talk the truth about the Palestine. That's probably the most important thing you can do, start with. And we need to stop the genocide, and we need to campaign for arms embargo. And I know our senators here in the state have supported the embargo, the arms embargo, and we need to keep campaigning with them and with others for the arms embargo, because America supplies the bombs. The bombs ran out in Israel, and there will be no massacres anymore. So unless we keep supplying them. And we can join the anti-apartheid campaign, such as the Apartheid Free Communities campaign. That's Duncan and Henry are working on for placing on the town meeting.
Yeah, and others in this room.
And others in this
It's a
room.
town, right after I'll send around a sign-up sheet.
But really the most important thing is to commit our own self to be anti-apartheid. And that's really the most important thing you can do as an individual, part of a community, to commit your own self anti-apartheid, to the anti-apartheid movement. And with that, you can decide on what you consume, so that you can take your money away from those who support the apartheid, and you can avoid Israeli products and products of companies that support the apartheid. You have the option of others, and including, avoiding pro-Israel musicians and artists and stuff like that. And you can screen your investment, your IRA and investment portfolio of funds that invest in Israel or in the military-industrial complex. That's a big part of what's happening in Palestine. And here you'll find there is some guidelines from the American Friends Society Committee on how you go about screening your investment and divesting from apartheid. And you can, if you are in university work, in academia, you can end your collaboration with Israeli universities and researchers who support apartheid. And there are many of them who don't, and we can work with them, but only those who support apartheid. And our banks, our local councils, we can urge them to divest from Israel, like including also the councils, the banks, the pension funds, etc. And we can urge our businesses to de-shelf Israeli products and products of companies that support Israel. That's something we can do. And student movement for Palestine, we can support them, amplify their voices as well. And if you are willing, also you can campaign to suspend Israeli membership in fora such as the FIFA, the Olympics, and now there is a campaign to suspend Israel membership in the UN. And I just want to say it worked in the case of South Africa against apartheid, and it should work in the case of apartheid Israel. And thank you so much for listening and for your solidarity. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Hamed.
Can I quickly pass this? Yeah, Hamed's talking about Apartheid Free Communities. It's a Friends, American Friends Service Committee action that's been going on for a number of years, but we're bringing it to Vermont, It's in Burlington, Montpelier, Winooski, Thetford, and I think another town. And the next year it will be in a lot more towns. And then
Sorry, can I also add, Duncan, I think in southern Vermont, there were about 7 towns last March who already adopted it.
they did.
Yeah,
And did
yeah.
they get it on
It was,
the
it was
Apartheid?
adopted.
Oh, it's,
Yeah.
you sure that wasn't the ceasefire? Was that apartheid free?
I think so, I could be
I
wrong.
know they're doing
Sorry, could be
BDS
wrong,
or
but I think it was.
divestment
Yeah.
in other places. And maybe some people here at the end have some other, things to announce, but, so that's what we're doing in Thetford. And those people who are here from Thetford, if you wanna sign your name, not sign, but, leave your contact information, we'll call you when it comes around to town meeting, because we wanna be organized and get that passed here in March. March 1st is town meeting. So I'm gonna pass this around, and if you're a Thetford person, please sign it. Give your information, your name, and we'll get in touch with you. Was that all? Yeah, I just wanna say, I know that this conversation we're having is not conducive to eating desserts. And I struggled with that idea, but it's also important to share food and something. So if you don't take anything, there will be little white paper bags, and you can take food with you. So feel free to do that. It's all homemade, wonderful bakers who contributed. So I'll send this around.
I'm not from Thetford.
Okay, there you go. Thanks, Scott.
Duncan,
Yes.
I just want to mention that
Yes.
the select board has to agree
Yes.
to put it on the ballot.
Yes.
So when it comes up to the select board, people should go to the select board.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, typically, I'll tell you, I've been here for 3 generations, my family, and whenever there is a non-town business article in Thetford, it's not been questioned by the select board. There have been things like not letting nuclear waste go through on 91, all sorts of good things. And so this time with Israel and Palestine, we may see a very different reaction. I think Thetford's going to be able to get through this and work it out. There are places like Burlington where that is going to be very difficult. But this is a tough one for people. There's a lot of organizing against solidarity with the Palestinians. It's intense, actually. So that's a whole other topic. So Henry, go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, we'll have more chance to talk with Hamed a bit after, and thank you. And yeah, before I forget, on Monday, the Burlington City Council is going to bring up
Speak up for the
Burlington City Council on Monday is going to bring up the question of the resolution that Burlington residents petitioned for. They got all the necessary signatures and more to divest Burlington, and the Burlington City Council is going to bring it up for a question, and as indicated, they may vote it down as they did last year, which goes basically against the town city constitution. If anyone's near Burlington, I'm sure they would appreciate you being there.
Henry, sorry. Also, you can go online and send messages to the city council members, and you can watch the meeting online where there will be testimony. If you
Yeah,
go to the
thank
city council page.
And if you email me, which my email is out there everywhere, or call Duncan Nichols in Thetford,
Just say,
we'll get you the
call Duncan
information.
Nichols.
Just
Don't
call me.
just say your last
I'm in the book. No, on all the posters we put up and various things is my email. Anyway.
Yeah, if you need contact information from me or my dad after, just come
Otherwise,
ask.
it'll be, the people on Zoom will just be.
screen share.
But yeah, so we'll talk more also about the Thetford resolutions after Mousa speaks. But Mousa is going to give us some more history, some more information about what we can do, and yeah, thank you for coming.
I want to start by thanking Duncan and Henry for inviting us. Beautiful Thetford and generous Thetford. Look at all of the food here; it's amazing. And am I blocking anybody? I'm gonna stand here. So we figured it out. So, as I mentioned, we are, Chris and I have lived in Vermont for 47 years. And as we drive around, no matter where we go in Vermont, it's really beautiful. And you will see why I love Vermont. I'm gonna start you with some pictures of Palestine, show the beauty of Palestine, because all you see is destruction, all of us, destruction and war. And so I wanna show you the beauty that is eternal, that has been there before even human beings came. That's how it was created. So I will go to the first picture.
He can,
Do you
there's a
want, do
little
you want to
button
do it,
there.
or do you
No.
want me to
No,
do
no,
it?
you
Either
do,
of you
you
guys
do
should
it.
do it,
Yeah, thank
You'll
you.
let us know.
Yeah,
Does that work? No. That's
so
how
this
we're
is
gonna do it.
this
We
is the
don't have
village where I was
slides.
born, one of my favorite places on earth, besides Vermont, by the way. And the next, so this is all olive groves, and this is very close to where Hamed grew up in Ramallah, and I'll show you on the maps. Next, please. This is, the hills are alive in spring. This is the time to go. So I'm gonna leave you with these images. This is how beautiful Palestine was and is, and we want to protect it from being destroyed. Next. Spring is the time to go. You know, it's really, really unbelievable. So the song, you know, in the hills are alive. This is it. Next, and I used to go all summer. You know, spend all summer in Palestine, and this was my playground. And that's always. And Hamid says, "Oh, he loves plants." It's because of this. I have a sunroom that is full of plants, olive trees, and all of that. It's because of this. Next, please. This is for Hamid. This is the village of Aboud, my village. It's overlooking the Mediterranean. You are seeing Jaffa and Tel Aviv. And that's blue stuff is the Mediterranean. We stood here, he came, he brought his father and brother. They came to visit us in Aboud when we were visiting. And we looked from over here, and Abbasiyah, where he was born, is on the coast. And the airport, what do you call it, Ben Gurion Airport is right there. And it is, part of it is under the airport. But they were totally ethnically cleansed, you know, that his town. So that's for you. So if you see where I grew up, where I was born, where his grandparents were born, maybe 5 miles air distance, you know, as the crow flies. Can you see over there? Next, please. You can see why I love Vermont. It's mountainous. I really love mountains. I love plains, but I love mountains. This was my playground in summer. You know, it's just loved it. I went to a Catholic school in Amman, you know, Jordan, a big city, and then when I went here, I went totally wild and drove everybody else wild. Next, please. This is the church. Long story, but I'll just tell you. It's Aboud's church. It was built 332 AD and has been in service, continuous service of my ancestors and my family to this day. So we have been there, you know, we always have been there. Next, please. This is my relatives inside that church. Next. So I always like to start with this. And these are learned from my dad. The Palestinian-Israeli conflict has absolutely nothing to do with religion, zero. It has to do with Europeans who came to Palestine and disinherited the indigenous people, the Palestinians, like Europeans did to other indigenous people in Americas, in Australia, we did it here, and in South Africa. So that's what it has to do with, and you'll see more. The Palestinians resisted occupations past. This is my dad. He said, we resisted the Turks, not because they were Muslim. The majority of Palestinians is Muslim. Not because they were Muslim, it's because they were occupiers. They resisted the British, not because they were Christian, it's because they were occupiers. It has nothing to do with religion. We are resisting the Israelis not because they are Jewish, it's because they are occupiers. All occupations past, this is really important, wanted to keep the Palestinian or the populations there to use them as labor, free labor. This occupation wants us out. This is totally different than the Roman occupation, Turkish occupation, all occupations past. They want us gone. I am for ethical non-violent resistance. Resistance to any occupation, violent or otherwise, is enshrined in international law. I just always like to start with these, especially the one to remember has nothing to do with religion, absolutely. Next, please. This is just to orient you, beautiful east of the Mediterranean. You know, this is a magnificent area, Lebanon, Syria, it's all a mess now, but so in the West Bank, you see where Jerusalem is, that big dot. My village is, Ramallah would be next, actually the next one would show it better. So Ramallah is there, this one here. My village is right northwest of that, right on that border overlooking the Mediterranean. A really beautiful place, the highlands of Palestine. Next, please. So, you know, when we say ethnic cleansing, we are not just throwing words here. It's Israel was created in 1948 based on ethnic cleansing, and I'll show you how it was planned. 750,000 people, 3/4 of the indigenous people, were kicked out into neighboring countries. And 500 villages were totally destroyed as they kicked them out. And the reason is so they don't come back. That's what they are doing. They are good at this. They have done this before. They are doing it now in Gaza. Why are they destroying life, you know, in Gaza? It's because they want him out. They want him gone. 250,000 people left in Galilee by mistake. The general, the Jewish general at the time, he was Canadian, and he was hearing, his task was to empty the Galilee. He was hearing of the Nuremberg trials. And he said, boy, this is not good. So he hesitated, and that's the only reason 250,000 people were left in the Galilee. 350, Hamed mentioned that, Palestinians were pushed in 1967, and now in Gaza and the West Bank, they are incredible duress, to leave. Next, please. So here is the intent, genocide, ethnic cleansing. Where is the intent? This is Theodor Herzl. He is a Viennese Jew, the founder of Zionism. In 1985, he has not even been to Palestine. 1895. He has not even been to Palestine. He doesn't know what it looks like. He said, we shall have to spirit the penniless population across the border by procuring employment for it in the transient countries, neighboring countries, while denying it employment in our own country. He's calling it his country. This is 85. This is before the 30s and the Holocaust. Of course, there is a horrible history in Christian Europe towards the Jews, pogroms and all of that. Unfortunately, we are being subjected to pogroms. And so both the process, and he knew what he's talking about, both the process of expropriation and the removal of the poor must be carried out discreetly and circumspectly. He knew he was talking about ethnic cleansing. And by the way, he did not say some of the population, he said all of them. So next you will see more. Now, I have names here, Ilan Papi and all of these. Very easy to access. Just put his name on the Google, you will get him, and you'll hear lectures, you'll hear questions and answer.
His book is on the table.
Yes, Ethnic Cleansing of Palestine. So,
This book, and any of these books, and all of this literature should be taken and read. So take the book. Take Elon
so here
Puppet.
is, we said 85, he's planning ethnic cleansing of Palestine. In 1897, Naaman Sirkin, who was the founder of the socialist Zionism, said Palestine must be evacuated for the Jews. He did not say partly or some, he said all must be evacuated. And then David Ben-Gurion in 1938, this is 10 years before 48, he said, I am for compulsory transfer. I do not see anything immoral in it. He's a war criminal. He really is. If the thing is, I'm going to show you some stuff here that any person could dig up all of this information and show it to you. Why isn't it being shown to people? And next, please, and I'll elaborate on this. Avi Shlaim, these are Israeli revisionist historians, thank goodness for them. He said the Zionist movement was in origin and in essence a European movement led by European Jews who wanted to create a Jewish state for European Jews. They really stuck with the Eastern Jews later, because of complications. So it was really for Europeans. So here is the map that really tells the story. In the 20s, there was probably 7% Palestinian Jews, 10% Palestinian Christians, and 80 plus Palestinian Muslims. We lived together for hundreds of years, intermingled in the same towns. My town is half Muslim, half Christian. We celebrate everything together. So what happened in the 30s, where Europe started sending Jews, not wanting them elsewhere, really what you will see is the Palestinians ended up to be the sacrificial lamb for the sins of Europe, Christian Europe, I mentioned that. And I will elaborate on religions later. So in the 20s or before, all through history, 7%, 10%, 80%, and Muslim, and we were fine, all Palestinians. And then in the 30s, imagine the size of Vermont, under 1 million at that time, Palestinians. The size of Vermont, and you have every year 30,000, 40,000 immigrants coming in by the boatloads coming in from Europe into Palestine. And that's caused first of all, my dad said, boy, we really felt awful for what was happening in Europe. And then when these people came, we noticed that they were really looking at our stuff. They wanted all of it. And so what happened is by 1940s, and there are lots of quotes, in another discussion I will share them with you, they only owned 7% of the land. So the green is Palestinian, and there were, with all of these immigrations, 500,000 Jewish people from Europe, mainly, and 1 million Palestinians. And then the United Nations said, oh, we are gonna, of course it's dominated by the superpowers who wanted Jews to be in Palestine. They said, we are gonna give all of the white stuff, the best pieces of the land, to the Jews, 500,000, and the 1 million Palestinians will give them the green stuff, in that map. And this one here is 1967, Israel took over the West Bank. So now they own from the river to the sea. That's the West Bank, and that's Gaza. Gaza, the green little strip, as Hamed mentioned, it's 30 miles long, 35 maybe, 8 miles wide at the bottom. So it's really several highways wide, with 2.3 million people stuffed in it. So what happened is, when they emptied, this is in 48, they shoved all of the Palestinians. They were after ethnic cleansing, remember, all of them. They shoved a ton in Lebanon, a ton in the West Bank. They couldn't grab the West Bank at that time. And then the whole South was very effectively, very efficiently, ethnically cleansed and shoved into Gaza. So Gaza was a beautiful little town, 50,000, and now all of a sudden, all of the towns from the center to south were shoved. Beersheba, big towns. Sorry, am I blocking you here? Were shoved into Gaza. So Gaza is all refugees, from these beautiful areas. And now that they have it, look what they have done to the green area. Gaza remained the miserable place it is, poor thing. And look at the West Bank. So the intent is obvious, from these maps. They really want the whole thing. It's land. It's all about land. So now it's crisscrossed, and the Palestinians are in these little green areas, Bantustans, divided by highways that are for Jews only, and towns and settlements for Jews only. So it's, when I say pure, that should scare us. And it does scare many of my Jewish friends, you know, to say we are pure roads and pure towns. Anyway, next please. So in all of these years, you heard about all of these peace processes. Norman really sums it up. Look him up, you know, he's awesome too. He said there is no peace process. There never has been a peace process. There's been an annexation process by Israel that uses the peace process as a facade or fig leaf to cover the annexation process. And all we are doing, you know, our Schultz and this, peace process is really as a fig leaf for what Israel is grabbing, because we are giving them the money to build the settlements. So this is what's happening. You know, you saw the map. It's very obvious. The intent is there. They really want all of the land. Next, please. Now Israel controls all of historic Palestine. Remember, they were stuck with 250,000 in Nazareth and Galilee. Now they are 2.5 million. There are 7.3 million Israeli Jews, and there are 7.3 million Palestinians in Palestine, in historic Palestine. 2.5 million Palestinians with Israeli citizenship, way under second class, you know, and I'll walk you through that. That's an apartheid system. It has been for 70 years. The 2.5 million in the West Bank under military occupation, 0 rights. Apartheid would be good, you know, to have some rights, but nothing. The West Bank is riddled with settlements for Jews only. When I say only for anybody, we should really raise our hands. Settlements are interconnected by roads for Jews only. 2.3 million Palestinians in Gaza under military occupation, and now they are being genocided. And that's the plan. So we'll next please. So apartheid, you know, what is it? It's, you know, just to sum it up, apartheid is an institutionalized regime of systemic oppression and domination by one group over others, to keep supremacy for one group over the others. And you can read this later, you know, you have a copy. Next, please. You know, we have, Hamed and me, I don't want you to cry. So here is the hopeful note. And Hamed mentioned that South Africa was a grotesque apartheid state with supremacy of whites over indigenous population. This one is even more grotesque, what we are dealing with. We never thought that will end in our lifetime. Did you think it will end in our lifetime? I didn't. You know, that South Africa. We really thought was going to go forever.
Do you think it ended?
Yes, it did. They had a long ways to go, you know, economically and all of that, but it really did end. You know, the institutionalized, they threatened with the nuclear, nuclear bombs and stuff, and that's gone too. So it ended, and it was transformed to a democracy with equal rights.
Just a note on that. Nelson Mandela, who was the new president, said no to nuclear weapons.
Mm-hmm.
And South Africa, prior to that, was one of the few countries of 9 that had nuclear weapons.
Right.
And they gave them to Israel.
And was that right?
Yeah.
Sorry.
So just quick. So it ended and was transformed a democracy with equal rights for all, due to outside people's pressure outside. In Israel, it's really almost, you know, the Israelis who are for equality are losing hope because the majority and the propaganda and all of that. So it's outside pressure, boycotts, divestment, and sanctions, and pressure on their own governments. Governments don't do it. Ours, I think, was the last. Israel was definitely the last. Many years after everybody else dumped South Africa, Israel stayed to the end. Next, please. So this is a hopeful note. So it can end. You know, as Bet Salam says, people made this system and people can undo it. And hopefully it's undone by the people there. Here is Nelson. He knows about apartheid. Apartheid is a crime against humanity. Israel has deprived millions of Palestinians. Why isn't this played on our media all the time? Because we respect this guy after he was terrorist and in jail for 27 years. He said it has perpetuated a system of gross racial discrimination and inequality. It has systematically incarcerated and tortured thousands of Palestinians, still going on, contrary to the rules of international law. And the most heartbreaking, it has in particular waged a war against civilian population, in particular children. That's what Nelson said, and I have a lot more quotes, but hold on to your seats, a little more coming. Ta-Nehisi Coates, good man, do you know him? Ta-Nehisi Coates? He went last year, and this is really important. I was told Palestine was complicated. Usually when somebody throws that at you, it's to end the discussion and shut you up. It's always, oh, it's so complicated. It's not. Visiting revealed to him a simple, brutal truth. I saw a system of segregation and oppression reminiscent of Jim Crow in the United States. That's what he saw. You know, I saw a interview with him. He said, as soon as I landed in 15 minutes, I said, I recognize that. I know that. He saw roads only for one group and not the others. So he, you know, it really is simple. When anybody tells you it's complicated, tell him, thank you, keep that to yourself. Next, please. Next. So, for the 250,000 that remained in Nazareth and Galilee, this is beautiful. There are over 50 laws from, what do you call it, the little documentary that you saw. Absentee, this is 1950, so 1948 Israel was created. 1950, they are really working hard. Anyone not present in 1950, after 750,000 Palestinians expelled, you shove them out, and then you say, oh, they are not here, by the way, so we can grab the land, the crops, the farms, the buildings, the vehicles, and the bank accounts, everything. So all of a sudden, the 750 lost everything they had. They were taken by the Israelis. Then the law of return confers instant Israeli citizenship. So I'm just documenting some of the laws, the grotesque laws that are racist. Israeli citizenship on all Jews from anywhere. We are in Vermont, you are Jewish, I'm not. You can go there and become instant citizenship. My ancestors go back to 332 minimum, by the way. It's actually, my ancestors go before Christ, and I'm not able to go back. Now I cannot go back more than 3 months. So then citizenship of 1952 confers individual citizenship on non-Jews. Oh, so that you say that's nice. You know, they are giving citizenship to some Palestinians who were present in Palestine before 1952. They gave them citizenship. But the reason they did that is this. This closed the door on the ability of the expelled Palestinians to return. Because now you have papers. If they catch you, they say, where are your papers? You are out again. So 750,000, 3/4 of the population, was dumped and never to be allowed to come back again. National rights are superior to citizenship rights. This is really insidious. When I say my nationality is American, my citizenship is American, it's one and the same, right? So here, Israel should ensure equal rights to all its citizens. This is really for the eyes of the world, to pull the wool over their eyes. Oh, we have, we gave them citizenship. But Israel is a Jewish state. It isn't a state of all its nations. That's the Justice Minister said this outright. I'm surprised that she said it actually, to put it out in the ether. So really what the benefits you get is from your nationality, not citizenship. Citizenship is just a facade. So planning and building law 1965, Judaization of as much land as possible, and then all the Palestinians around Nazareth, all the Palestinian villages, unrecognized. They designated them unrecognized. After they took, there are, if you read about it, they put blue lines on maps for where the town is, but everything else is gone. So all of the land of Nazareth, all the land of all the villages is gone, totally gone. And it is limiting by unrecognized villages. It limits growth and development because there are nothing there, even though there are tons of villages and towns, but no development for the Palestinian towns. And then really the insidious, the awful thing Anybody could dig this up, and why don't we know it? Israel has nationalized 93% of the territory into the Jewish National Fund as a trust for the Jewish people alone, not to be sold, bought, or leased by non-whites, non-Jews. Can you imagine if this was non-whites? We would have to say that's not right, But that's what the law is. It's not to be leased even to a Palestinian who used to own it. So they are out. And these are really terrible, insidious. And if people know about it, they will, I think 1 week of total information of what's really happening and what the laws are would change the whole country in the United States. And citizenship entry, after 67, they noticed the Palestinians that were stuck in Nazareth and area in Galilee started marrying Palestinians from the West Bank and Gaza maybe. And they said, oh, that's not good, because that you can have a citizenship. So they immediately enacted in 203 denies Palestinians the right to residency or citizenship through marriage. So if you are Israeli citizen and you marry a Palestinian, you can marry anybody, but especially if you marry a Palestinian, you have to move out. Oh, and that's a nice way of reducing the numbers that you have, right? So a nation state of the Jewish people, 218, Israel does not have a constitution. It has basic laws that codify Jewish supremacy. In a country where 25% of the population is non-Jewish, Palestinian Muslims and Christians, the law removed Arabic as an official language. 25% of the people speak Arabic. The whole country should speak, 2 languages. Why not? But no, they removed that. This is the worst. This is absolutely awful. Admission committees. So 93% of Israel is totally segregated. People don't know this here. They get surprised. They say, oh, I thought no, it's totally segregated. Most of it is pure this or pure that. A couple places, like in Haifa, in couple Ludda, they are mixed, but they really are segregated neighborhoods and segregated schools. So, admission commission, one Palestinian, this is a story, one Palestinian that did well, as a nurse, in a hospital, and he wanted his family in their area, undesignated areas, you remember? No roads, no this, no that. He wanted to build a nice house. He did build a nice house, but still no amenities. So he wanted to move to a Jewish settlement, and they prevented him. They went to I give him credit. He went all the way to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court, because I forgot the name of him, I have that. The Supreme Court justice was respected in the United States. They said these are unacceptable, and he said this is not the right language. Rejected the case. They came back with socially unsuitable. Can you imagine? I move here in Thetford or in Essex Junction, and they say this guy is unsuitable, because he's not pure white or something. It's really disgusting, actually. This is the worst. I really hate this, because these were codified in 2011. They actually passed them under Netanyahu. And segregation, 93% of the country is segregated. Palestinian citizens of Israel, 25%. You remember redlining? 2% of the mortgages only are owned by Palestinians. Palestinians in Israel, forget about the West Bank and Gaza. Education and other community resources allocation is by nationality and by citizenship only. Not by citizenship. Yeah, it's only by nationality. So if you are Israeli citizen, but you are not the right nation, you get nothing. Schools or roads or any of that. Tourism zoning, Jewish areas only. So tourism zoning means building hotels and the places to have tourists. It's all chucked into Tiberias now, in Lake Tiberias. That's the zone where they want everybody up there. And now the sad part, buses go to Bethlehem to visit, or Nazareth even, which is in Israel proper. They go there, the tourists are allowed to go in and leave. They are not buying anything, they are not leaving any money. Chris was so upset we saw it with our own eyes. People are not, because they are told by their Israeli guides, "Oh, you just get in and get out, see Jesus and just get out of there." So, yeah, so I mean, it's really, it's laughable, it's disgusting. So she said they are not leaving even money in the poor box. In every church there is a poor box to leave, to maintain the church, to maintain all of these people, hundreds of thousands of people walking into these churches, the famous ones, and leaving without leaving anything because they are instructed not to. And then they go to Tiberias and party and have fun because it's zoned for, under total Israeli control. They even tried, I'll mention this, it's not here, they tried Bethlehem. They really hate Bethlehem for some reason more than any other town, for some reason, surrounded by wars and all of that. But they said, "Oh, we discovered a little archaeology place in the north, and we think it's Bethlehem." So they really wanted to eliminate Bethlehem as the birthplace of. Seriously, it's that ridiculous. Next, please. Sorry, I hope I'm not depressing you here. So Israel has 4 options: a single democratic state with equal rights for all, not an ethno-religious one; 2 states, 1 Israeli, 1 Palestinian. The first 2, Israel doesn't want. I mean, they've said it a million times. We are not doing it. Apartheid state with supremacy of one group over the other. But my theory is, this is only until we ethnically cleanse the rest. They really didn't want to be called, and that's my theory. Because if you read the planning and the intent, they wanted to clean everybody out. Call us ethnic cleanser, but we are not an apartheid state. But they are stuck. They really are. So, this is my quote, an ethno-religious state will forever be engaged, I say, in evil doing of population engineering and control. It's just, they say, "Oh, it's the only Jewish state surrounded by Muslim countries." The Muslim countries, they are, first of all, they are not called Muslim countries. Jordan, all of these places, they are called Arab Republic of Syria or this and that. And Arabic, by the way, just for your information, I'm Christian, Hamed is Muslim, but I'm not into the pointing out what religion. It's just I'm pointing it out because we are brothers and sisters. And in Jordan, I grew up in Jordan, I thought I can become anything. Maybe not the king, but everything else. And the reason is because I was not discriminated against. Chris was in Amman, Jordan. This is majority Muslim country. One night, it was Easter, I think. One night she woke up and she said, "My God, what is this?" Bells were ringing and chanting from the churches, for Easter. Bellowing all over. I don't know if they... It was loud. What crap. Anyway, next. So there are 4 solutions, but Israel is really obsessed with the last, with ethnic cleansing. This guy, Nico Palad, I love him. He's, again, one of my heroes. Israel is faced with 2 options. I told you 4 because he knocked out 2 because they are not going to do that. So continue to exist as a Jewish state while controlling the Palestinians through military force and racist laws. Or undertake a deep transformation to a real democracy where Israelis and Palestinians live as equals in a shared state. Beautiful. I mean, really, this sounds... In a shared state, their shared homeland. For Israelis and Palestinians alike, the latter path promises a bright future, and truly. So this is not about chucking anybody out. We are the ones being chucked out, the Palestinians. This is about coexisting as equals. That's all. And next, please. My last one, what can we bring to a just peace? Just to elaborate on it. Educate ourselves, neighbors, friends, towns, about the truth. This has nothing to do with being against anybody. This is for the good of Israel, for the good of the Jews of Israel, for the good of the Palestinians. Work with our congressional delegation, politicians, to do the right thing. Thank them when they do it. Really, they need to hear that they are doing the right thing, otherwise they'll give up. Boycott, divest. Chris and I sat with and we are spreading it with our friends. We sat with our investment people. We don't have much, but we told whatever you have, please clean it up from the list that you have over there. And I really thought we would meet resistance. They said, absolutely, no problem. They took it out. They cleaned it out. It took a while. because when they started digging into it, they found some of these companies are embedded in 85 little things. Unbelievable, and they reduced it to almost zero. And Bet Salam, please go to their website. It's really, really important. An Israeli human rights organization. I'm just summarizing very quick what they said. A regime that uses laws, practices and organized violence to maintain the supremacy of one group over another is an apartheid state. That's as simple as that. And then there are various political paths to a just solution, to a just future. But all of us must first choose to say no to apartheid, and that's really what we are here for. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah. So let's talk about what we can do. I really want to thank both of you for coming so much.
Our pleasure. Thank you for your patience.
Yep, thank you.
So Thetford and a bunch of other towns have resolutions to, the primary thing is divest our town assets from likely this list, which is weapons manufacturers, companies like Caterpillar, which makes armored bulldozers.
Destroying Palestine.
Yeah,
They're
clear
really
what the point is of that.
Alameda County, California divested.
Yes,
from
Alameda, which has a
Caterpillar.
larger population than the entire state of Vermont. So this is, it's big.
Is it possible, before you get to what we can do,
Yeah.
to have any discussion about what we just heard?
Sure.
Sure. Yeah. If anybody has any questions or short things to say,
Yeah, just to say thank you. I think that's the main reason we're here, really, is to converse, ask questions. You can all divest. We're going to put stuff on the listserv. There are other towns putting things on media, and you can plug in at other times.
is there room for you?
But yes, let's ask questions. And I'll try to get to some of the questions on the Zoom. If you need to leave, there's some white paper bags. And looks like someone broke into the lemon, what's it called, the lemon port.
I know who did.
You gotta eat this. Anyway, so there's white paper bags, just take food. Because we're all on,
26.
us older
I'm
people are on a diet.
73.
Go
Please
ahead.
consider taking a plate and taking a baked apple home. Baked apples are wonderful comfort food, and I think after some medicinal comfort food will help us replenish our energy. So please consider taking a baked apple with you on the plate home to heat up.
So don't feel shy if you need to
I'm
leave, just
73.
get up and there's literature you can take. And
Yeah,
read the listserv and we'll have all this other information. But go ahead, let's ask, is we okay to ask questions? Is that good, Henry?
Sure.
Okay.
Of course, yeah.
I had one. How do you think that the situation in Syria affects the situation in Gaza? You have this army taking over Syria. It's I forget, al-Sham. The head of that calls himself al-Julani, meaning Golan Heights. But they've been extremely deferential vis-a-vis Israel. They won't say anything against Israeli operations. It seems like they have a tactical and strategic alliance.
Yeah.
And the Israelis have pushed past the Golan now, and are bombing all of the Syrian military assets.
Yeah.
Damascus. So I'm just wondering how that would affect this, since they seem to be that group seems to have its sights set on Hezbollah, and I think had significant disagreements with Hamas.
Go ahead.
For one thing, up until Syria thing started, the word cameras were on Gaza. With Syria thing starting, the word cameras came to Syria. The genocide in Gaza continues. So if that is one thing that Syria crisis, it only harms what's happening in Palestine. It just takes away from people's attention to what Israel is doing in Palestine. And that's not good. The other thing is what's happening inside the borders of Palestine, that the Israeli occupation, the Israeli genocide in Gaza is confined to that area. Like Syrian, whatever, what they call them? Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. Yeah. There's no connection with what's happening in Gaza. What's happening, is a Syrian thing. Of course, Hezbollah in Lebanon, worked to put the pressure on Israel until what happened in Lebanon as well. But what's happening in Syria, the only thing it will do is just take the world's attention from what's happening in Gaza, so Israel can continue to do what it's doing in Gaza without the cameras. But the cameras anyway were not on Gaza because no news agency was allowed to, no international journalist was allowed into Gaza, and they are not allowed until now. And Israel had killed 189 Palestinian journalists who tried to provide the world with a picture of what's happening. So that's probably my take on it. Now, of course, it will weaken, it will remap the Middle East in a way, in favor of Israel in many ways. But that's not at this time like a topic of our conversation. I think our conversation is how to end the occupation, the brutal military occupation of 5.3 million people, stop the genocide against 2.3 million Palestinians, and end the apartheid against the 2.5 million people who are Israeli citizens but not nationals, and the 5.3 Palestinians who are occupied and subjected to the apartheid Israel. We need to end that. That's the topic of our conversation now, if I may say.
I'll say this: if every distraction that happens in the area harms the Palestinians. Israel counts on that, and we have been saying for a long time, the Palestinians are really alone. They are counting on us. Seriously, the Arab countries just discard in the garbage bin. Happening in Syria or Iraq, it's has no bearing other than negative. So I tell people, if we don't stop it, it is guaranteed that it's going to get much worse for the Palestinians. Guaranteed. And it has gotten much worse, and it's getting worse as we speak. So it's our money that is supplying the arms and the bombs. It's our tax dollars from the towns, from personnel. That's why I say clean your investments. We did, and it was really much easier than I thought. And the rest are really distractions. The Palestinians have been waiting for salvation. The salvation comes, I seriously hate to say this, from here, because we are the only ones propping the Israeli regime. And it's not, we don't want them to prop him, but we don't want them to keep them going the way they are going. They've got to transform into equality, as we just discussed. And where, everybody lives as equal, and it can be done. As I mentioned, Bet Salem says, people have made this system and people can unmake it. And that's what we want to help. The rest are really distractions. What happens in Syria tomorrow is happening in Turkey, God knows. But I hope that answers. Yes.
First, I want to thank you both very much.
You are welcome.
My name is Dove Taylor. I'm a rabbi. I was in Israel in '67, during the '67 war. And for more than the last 50 years, I've been preaching and working against the occupation. I think that what we've heard today, if anything, was an understatement.
Thank you.
Um,
Yes, we didn't want to depress people, you know.
I understand. I'm glad you mentioned the fact that there are Israelis who are very much opposed to what their government
Yes.
is doing, just as there are Americans who are very much opposed to what our government
Yes.
is doing. And one question which hasn't been discussed today, I understand there isn't time to talk about everything, is why is the United States giving this uncritical support, you know, and arms and money to Israel? But I'm going to say three things. Well, one I've already said, the fact that we have to remember there are Israelis who understand what a grievous wrong this is.
And American Jews.
And American Jews
Yes.
as well.
Yeah.
Secondly, and it's important for you to hear this from a rabbi, I'm an outlier among my colleagues, which is how I know I'm right. Okay, namely, legitimate criticism of Israel is not anti-Semitism.
Right.
Don't let anyone tell you that. That is pure and simple bullshit.
Yep.
Legitimate criticism, okay? And here's my final point. Israel is not to be equated with Judaism.
Yeah.
Right.
So I understand that there is a law being passed that says that criticism of Israel is anti-Semitism in the U.S., which will make our job even harder than it is. And I wonder if somebody wants to speak to that.
Hamed, go ahead. Hamed invited me, by the way, to be his partner, so he has.
No. You are Mousa.
First dibs.
You are my first. You are my. Mousa, I'm glad we are talking together here, but there are a lot of the questions that you might have. Actually, typically I would say, well, let's talk about them rather than us answering to them. Like why is America so invested in Israel? Let's talk about it as Americans. I have my theories, I have my positions, but what would that do? But I have my understanding of why. American interest in domination in the world, the economic, military domination. That's the empire. We know that, but we can talk about it ourselves, including the question you just asked. Well, why don't we just have the floor talk about it? And I think that's what I proposed to Duncan to start with. Is like we deliver our talk, and the group here will have a conversation within the group about it, because we don't have the answers to everything. I mean, we can answer, questions of stuff that we know well. I can tell you what's it like to grow under apartheid, to be a young child, to grow, go to school when the Israeli soldiers stop you on the way, have you put your arms up and legs spread against the bus for hours on your way to school and on your way back from school. I can tell you all this terrible stuff that I had to experience as a child, as a teenager, even as an adult. I can tell you, like, for example, why I retire here, not in Palestine, because the Israelis will not allow Pat to settle with me in Ramallah, because she's not Palestinian, she's not resident of the West Bank, so she cannot live with me. And that's why I have to live here. That's why my sister, who's married to a person from Jordan, is living in Jordan. She's not allowed to live with her family in Palestine. That's why my two brothers here, who one of them lives in Florida, one in North Carolina. One of them is married to a Tunisian woman, one is married to a Jordanian woman. And the Israelis will not allow their families to live with them in Palestine. That's going back to apartheid. The racialized laws that not allow me to live with my family in Palestine, but I can talk about this for hours. That's what I know, and I know a lot about that. But what can we as Americans do? Every one of us, is something for us to talk about. And I would like this conversation to go to the floor if you...
Why do you think, I mean, that's the question, why do you think the United States is so committed to helping Israel?
Because my feeling is, and I've thought about this a lot.
Louder.
And my feeling is, and I've thought about this a lot, and by the way, I have a great-great-grandfather who was a rabbi in Amsterdam. You know?
Yes.
So, you know, you might think that I would come down on, out of sentimentality, on the Israeli side. It's not true. I mean, I'm really a Unitarian. But I tell you what, my answer to the question is that there is so much money. Follow the money. There's so much money involved in our national political scene that no president is going to go against Israel. That's because he or she, we wish it were she, wants to be elected.
Yep.
I think it's just, I like what you say, it's really very simple. I think the answer to this is really very simple.
Yes, it is.
And I think that's the reason we have so much trouble. Look at, I remember I was shocked when our former president, still our president, Biden, who I consider to be a wonderful person, went the day after the murders and hugged Netanyahu. I thought, what? So that's my contribution. I just think that's the bottom line.
Also the evangelical.
Yes, thank you.
Evangelical support.
And
sure.
AIPAC and the AIPAC, the American Israel Political Affairs Committee,
Yes.
which is swimming in money and is
It's a
a
nonprofit.
lobby, and the Anti-Defamation League, ADL. And I believe Ilan Pape's latest book is about the hold on American politicians by AIPAC.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that, I would say Christian Zionism and those two things.
What is AIPAC?
AIPAC, the American Israeli Public Affairs
Committee.
Committee.
Committee, okay.
Political action.
Political action.
No, it's not a political action committee.
Public affairs.
It's a public, they call them.
But now they have a political
They
action.
are a PAC
Yes,
as
that's
well.
right.
And they have unseated
Several.
members of Congress, mostly people of color and Jews, who were sympathetic to Palestine, but they do it by giving money to people to run against them in primaries, and they were very successful.
No,
It's
you are
also the
touching.
estate of Sheldon Adelson, Miriam Adelson, and Maya Saban are very much behind that.
Yes.
But well, another thing is that the 3.8 billion that we give a year to Israel, plus the 20 billion that Biden just allocated.
Approved, yeah.
Most of that money doesn't go directly to Israel. It goes to our weapons manufacturers.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
they're destroying the environment with those.
Yeah, you're saying exactly what I said, except in extending it.
It's
Follow
money.
the money.
Yeah.
Follow the money. I think if you want to look at any of these questions, you have to follow the money, and I think that's the big answer.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
don't know, it's an intractable situation. I don't know what to do.
Well, I have a question.
Yes.
Is there does anybody know of any organization or group in Vermont right now that has developed a list of those corporations that should be
Yes.
divested?
Yeah, there is a list
You pass
here.
this around.
It's
don't you?
red.
Yeah.
And it's not by no means it's inclusive. It's developed by the American
Friends
Friends
Service.
Friends Committee.
But can I
Yeah,
add something?
please.
Yeah, please. Yeah.
So there are people who are talking about the food co-ops because they carry Israeli-made products as well. And I'm
Yes.
sure regular stores do
Right.
too. But a couple of them, because I've looked at the labels and taken pictures of them.
Good
Yeah.
for you.
Yeah,
You
thank
are-
you.
Are
Thank
something
you.
absolutely, which are gluten-free products and Manischewitz, but not all Manischewitz products.
Of course.
Yeah.
I've read a lot of the labels.
And that's
I
one
want to
of.
thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you
You
so much.
educated us.
Thank you
a
so
lot.
much.
You
Thank
helped a
you.
lot.
You're welcome.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you for
Thank
being
you
here.
so much for being here. Yeah.
Take care, Sam.
I
Listen to her.
she's saying.
I work
I'm-
with Jewish Voice for Peace in Upper
Right.
Valley.
Yeah, awesome.
And Upper Valley for Palestine.
Yeah.
Yes,
And I'll add one more thing.
yes.
That the White River Indie Film Fest will take place the weekend of Valentine's Day. And one of the main films we're showing is called No Other Land.
Yes.
Which is a
Excellent.
collaboration of an Israeli and Palestinian.
Yeah.
And we will have a discussion.
Can I mention, just elaborate on that?
Yeah.
Our sister city sponsored that movie in Burlington Film
Right.
Festival.
Oh,
It was
good.
seen by at least 600 people. It was
Yeah.
stuffed. There's two showings, and it's really one of the most powerful. We have seen a lot of documentaries.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
was simple, beautiful. Simple is important. It just told the story without hammering you over the head. It just beautiful film.
There's
See
another-
it if you can.
There's another one called Lid, I think, L-Y-D.
Yeah, I haven't seen
Yeah,
it
it's
yet.
banned in Israel.
Yeah.
The
It's
Jewish
on the
Voice for
Ovid
Peace
video
in Central Vermont and the Savoy Theater are having a film festival this winter every other week. But some of those films will probably be shown in the Upper Valley, by Upper Valley for Palestine and Jewish Voice for Peace.
Yeah.
Could I ask other people's opinions to come back to your question? Because I think your question was a really good one to discuss.
Yeah.
How can we go forward if this legislation, which it's gonna, if it doesn't pass now, it'll pass in February.
Yeah.
I mean, how much will that affect us and what can we do about it?
Legislation
The
about
legislation.
anti-Semitism.
We're not in a state where that's an issue yet, that you have to sign something saying that, you support Israel in order to teach in a school or, which is happening in a lot of states. But federal laws, I mean, that's a question for people to really think about, because that really stops people, it makes people scared to even say something or they use certain words instead of other words, and the minute we have to start doing that, we're self-censoring before we even become activists. So I would love to hear, and I like Hamed, I did grow up in Vermont, but I've lived overseas my whole life, so I don't know that much still about, we just moved back a few years ago.
And
I'd really like to hear more
Yeah.
about what people think
I
about
just want to
that.
say that there's the other piece of it is the law about that a nonprofit
Right.
Yeah.
can be
Deemed
whatever.
a terrorist,
Yeah.
deemed.
Well, I mean,
yeah,
but if
lose
they
its funding.
they can
its
lose
status.
their nonprofit status
That's right.
if they
That's
do
coming.
anything that is considered
Right.
collaborating with a terrorist state,
Right.
and of
Right.
course, terrorist
Call
state.
your
Yeah.
senators and Becca Ballant, our state
Yes.
representative.
Yeah.
Call them many times. And speak
As
to
many
the
as you
staffers.
can.
That's right. And
Yeah.
speak to the staffers and educate them.
Yeah.
Well, the good thing is that they're actually doing pretty well now. It took them a while, but all three of them are
Keep it up.
doing, they're doing much better on a lot of these things. But so that we can, I mean, they will have voted against these. Although I don't think Ballant voted against the anti-Semitism one, if I'm not mistaken.
I think she
But
did-
the other one-
Chris,
I
did
think
she?
she did once and then she changed.
Then
it.
she changed
She
it.
needs
That's
to
right.
hear from constituents.
Yeah.
yes, yep.
She needs to
She needs
hear
to
on
be
the good things
educated.
she's doing as well, but I think that, I don't think, it's gonna pass. I mean, it's great to give them credit for what they do, but we know that's gonna pass, I'm sorry. It's gonna pass in February if it's not now, so I come back to how do we deal with it,
And that's a floor conversation.
Yeah, and that's, I
that's-
love other
that's
people's
a
opinions.
Can I
Been
just
activists for
mention
long.
something before it gets too late? I just want to thank you, Rabbi, for
Yes.
your stand.
Yes.
Awesome. And you are an example. I deal with few rabbis in our area. They need to hear from you.
Yeah.
And I would also like to thank you. A friend of mine from Jewish Voice for Peace, with whom I go around talking like this, Jason Hirsch, one time told me that preserving life and liberation is a very Jewish value. It's
It
not
is.
anti-Jewish. And thank you for repeating that to us and confirming it. Thank you. I would like us to talk about these issues here, and amongst ourselves. But I wanted just also to share with you this. I was speaking at Fairfield, a small town in Franklin County, and the person who organized the talk went ahead and looked up what the $3.8 billion that we give to Israel, those are the 3.8 billion tax money, what it would do for the United States if that money was kept here. But not only that, she went ahead and looked at what that would do to Vermont in terms of like what gaps and deficits that Vermont had in terms of housing, in terms of education, in terms of healthcare. How much would that bring back to Vermont? And not only that, but she went further and looked at how much money Fairfield was contributing out of the $3.8 billion. And it was like a town of a small town, like 2,000 people or less, I think, 1,000. And they are contributing at 25,500 for a tiny town like that.
Just from this stuff.
Right out of our pockets.
Yep.
Exactly. And so when you look at what money, and that's only $3.8 billion, but imagine the $20 billion.
Actually 48, what they gave them is 18, was approved beginning of the year, and 20 just passed. So
38 billion.
38 billion.
So it just like that.
Yeah.
Because some folks are leaving, there's an announcement that we'd like to share.
Yes, please.
We're from Woodstock. My name is Judith, and I'm very proud to be Bill's wife. Tomorrow afternoon at the North Universalist Unitarian Church in Woodstock, from 3:30 until 5:30, is going to be a program of dance, poetry, and music, and various readings with to support the World Kitchen, and there will be donations will be accepted, and there will be some treats to share at the end of this
Does
program.
everybody know what the World Kitchen is?
Yes, yes.
Is that Leon's church? Pardon? That's Leon's, yeah. And this is at the North Chapel.
I'm not stopping
in
conversation.
Woodstock.
I didn't want to stop conversation, but I'm on a diet. I just can't leave
I have a question and maybe an observation and a question. I live about 2 blocks from here. How can Americans both identify and support the political needs of the Palestinian people if you do a thought experiment and say every dollar that's currently invested by the American people or the U.S. government or the world, for that matter, stops. Every corporation stops that has any involvement in the Israeli, shall we say, economy, stops involving itself in the Israeli economy. To me, that still leaves the question: how is the Palestinian leadership going to resolve its own internal conflicts in order to rebuild the communities that have been destroyed?
Is that a question to us?
Well, maybe somebody else has some ideas about it. I mean, I was a student during the South Africa protests, and there was a political entity in South Africa which was pretty widely supported
And respected.
Yep. So it seems to me that that's not quite the case right now in Palestine or greater Israel or that part of the Middle East. So how does that happen?
I don't have an answer to specific because I don't see the future, but I can tell you where the fragmentation of the Palestinian leadership comes from. The fragmentation comes from again, decades of attack on the Palestinian leadership. In 1936, when the British government, the British Empire, destroyed the Palestinian first people's revolt against colonization, they not only militarily destroyed that, but they killed all the leadership. And they kept the leadership, what I call reactionary leadership, leadership that attached itself to the British colonialism to gain benefits. Now, as Israel occupied the Palestinian land, did exactly the same. It propped up that kind of leadership that allied itself with Israel, and that's what Oslo Agreement did as well. The Palestinian Authority today is nothing but a contractor, a subcontractor for the Israeli occupation of the West Bank, and it was the same in Gaza. And so then there were the elections was it 2000? The elections 2005. The second round of elections. And the second round of election, which was monitored by international monitors, including Jimmy Carter and others, and UN and everybody, and the elections were fair and legitimate, and leadership that was counter to the Oslo Agreement proponents, which is the Palestinian National Authority, won the elections because of the corruption that the Palestinian National Authority had adopted. It was like so corrupt that people revolted against it, and Hamas won. Now, did Palestinians want Hamas to win or not? I don't know, but I know that it was that the Palestinian, when you looked at the exit polls at that time, and you ask people, why did you vote and how did you vote, and people would say corruption. Go back to history. It was corruption that. But listen, if you want democracy, we don't choose who rules in democracy. We have not chosen a Trump he won, and he's going to be a fascist, and we cannot just say, well, democracy doesn't work when a fascist is elected or when a religious person is elected. Democracy works when people vote. Now, what happened after Hamas won is like Israel immediately declared Hamas a terrorist state. It was not a terrorist state until then. Immediately declared them a terrorist state. And immediately after that, the US and Europe declared them a terrorist state and prevented them from ruling. And that's how they fragmented the leadership. And I bet you, like what happened in Egypt, if Hamas ruled for 1 year and there were elections a year later, Hamas would have lost 100%, like Egypt did. When the Islamists lost in Egypt the second time around, when the military took over, no Egyptian, when you ask them, did you want the Islamists to remain? And the Egyptians said, no, absolutely not. Majority of Egyptians, even though they were ruled by a dictatorship, military dictatorship. So the Palestinian community in general is a community that is so, and Mousa and I have been talking about this, is so non-religious community. It's secular. If you are religious, if you are Christian, or if you are Muslim, that's on your own. That's your business. And I keep saying, it's like, I grew up in Ramallah, a town at the time when I was a teenager. 50% of Ramallah were Christians, 50 were Muslims. And I bet you did not know who was Muslim, who was Christian. No, of course not. In Ramadan, which is the fasting Muslim month, I remember I had a friend, a classmate, who I discovered was a Christian when we just finished high school and we were going to university. All the time I did not know he was Christian. It was not an issue. It wasn't relevant. It was not relevant at all. And I'm saying all of this because of the misunderstanding sometimes because of the media. When the media comes and focuses on Palestine, it always focuses on the division but it does not tell you where the division comes from. It comes from the manipulation that we, as a government here, as the government of Israel, had played in manipulating the leadership. But also, now the question you asked, which is where do we go from here? I don't have an answer where do we go from here, but I think, you know, a better leadership will emerge. And you know, should we come to a point where the apartheid regime feels that we can no longer continue on apartheid as an apartheid, and we have to accept democracy, a formula will be worked out for everyone who lives in that land, Jewish, Israeli, Palestinian Israeli, or Palestinians who live in the West Bank and Gaza. There will be a formula that gets worked out. And it will probably not be, it will not be the Israeli formula right now or the Palestinian formula. It will be a formula for all.
Or the American formula.
Or the American formula. And it will emerge. It will emerge. But it will emerge with accepting that apartheid has to be dismantled, and equal rights, justice for everyone between the land and the sea.
Can I just mention something to really simplify? Remember, occupations divide and conquer.
Yeah.
Always remember that. As long as they are in control, they are going to divide the leadership, kill him, whatever, prop up who they want. Hamas was really nurtured into existence by Israel. And the reason is to split, because the PLO or the current leadership is really secular, and that scared the heck out of them. They don't like secular because they are an ethno-religious state. So they wanted Hamas, which has a religious tint. I don't like him, Hamed doesn't like them, Hamed. But so divide and conquer as long as, but I really believe, honestly, if the situation changes, there are tons of Palestinians who will be incredible leaders immediately. So they are there, they are available. It's just to stop Israel from manipulating and killing. Look at, they really kill all the leadership that, for example, there is a leader, Barghouti, who's in jail for 40 years. They call him the Mandela of the Palestinians. And the Palestinian leadership probably is okay with it, with him still in
Actually,
jail.
they don't want him out.
Yeah, because they are threatened by him. So Israel is holding him because he knows he's a unifying figure for the Palestinians. So the question is, are there unifying figures? Can it change overnight? I'm convinced 100% that we can. The leadership can change into something better, unifying overnight.
And I, just to clarify in addition and just cement what Mousa said, I remember before Oslo Agreement, when there was no Palestinian National Authority, there was no such political representation of the Palestinian, there was no such thing as government or anything in the West Bank and Gaza. But yet, the West Bank and Gaza was, civic society managed it by organizing, and there was local leadership.
No Hamas, no
Hamas, no PLO, no external leadership that came in. And I mean, I asked Pat about driving in Ramallah before the BNA came. It was the most orderly driving that you could see in any place. It was that local management, city management, and so on. And the civic society was so strong. And the first thing that Oslo Agreement did, undermine the civic society and replace it with an authority. And that's again, it's fragmenting the leadership. It's divide and rule.
Yeah, 100%.
And if you remember, Netanyahu, himself, up until a year or maybe 6 months before the war in Gaza, the genocide in Gaza, was defending, allowing financial support to flow into Hamas, because his statement to the Israeli parliament was, if you want to prevent a Palestinian state, you have to support Hamas.
To keep them divided.
To keep them
Yeah,
divided.
Wasn't it
absolutely.
happening even earlier with Begin, with something called the village councils?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Same kind of thing.
I
same
remember,
kind of
yeah.
thing, yeah. So, yeah, I mean, that question, I hear that argument quite a bit sometimes. Oh, but ANC was the leadership and Palestinians don't have a similar leadership. But that is not the thing, is the
It's not an
Palestinian.
argument against action, it's only
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
question.
It's
Yes.
a
how
question.
to support and develop
Yeah.
a coherent leadership which does have the support of the people who will benefit from their own civil rights.
It's already there. It's
I
already.
guess part of my, can I just address that? I also think that, that is often a question, and I understand the question. My personal answer to it is that it's not my business. That's up to the Palestinians. In other words, I mean,
Yes.
our best way of dealing with that is to keep our government, I mean, leaving aside Israel itself, keep our government out of it. I mean, look what we're doing in Syria right already. You know, we're part of helping to make sure Syria doesn't settle as a democratic state. We don't want that, as Hamed said. So personally, my feeling is that that's not for us as Americans who aren't also Palestinian to even, I would say worry about. We can worry about it, but our job is to keep our governments out of it.
And it's not even my worry as Palestinian living overseas. It's not my business living overseas, but
Thank you for your help.
Thank you.
I'll be back, I'm just
Thank
trying
you.
to keep it right.
But I think if anyone wants to help resolve that, what people say, complicated situation, the only thing one can do is basically end our complicity in that system. Our individual complicity.
I think that all of this starts with all of us doing a deep dive,
Yes.
personally. And there are so many people that still have not recognized that we are a military-industrial complex.
Big time.
We're literally in denial.
Yes.
I saw, with this last election, I saw just horrendous, audacious statements by all sides.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. All sides. And some of my peers they're just in goddamn denial. And they're not putting the pieces together. So when you have, a president and people running for office, and nobody's picking up on the fact that there are these, speeches that are talking about the comfort of sending the level of weaponry that we send, and that they're still okay to vote for whomever who are this audacious. And it's just it's so typical. It's just been a lifetime of seeing this. So I think that it's about us.
Yeah.
It starts with each one of us.
Can I quickly jump in on that? Thank you. Because Henry and I were collecting signatures in Post Mills at Baker's store. And I'll tell you, a lot of the people there may have either voted for Trump or didn't vote at all.
I'm not talking about Trump.
I just want to comment. That they know what the military-industrial complex is.
Yes, but I'm
and
talking
they know they're
about,
paying for it.
I'm talking about
So I'm
people,
agreeing with you.
Right, I know,
I'm
but
saying
I'm
that
also
we're all-
saying
we all get it.
It's not, I
It's
don't want to
very
bring
important.
Trump into it. I
Anyway,
want to say that it's
I'm
people
not bringing
who are-
Trump. I'm saying that even among us in our town,
Yes.
and in all of Vermont, there are many people on all sides of the political spectrum who totally agree with you.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. And I think it is about us. It's about the money we spend on weapons and how we're that kind of
But it's a
economy.
lot of people don't see it. They're
Right.
literally
Yeah.
listening to these
Sure.
speeches
Yeah.
that are ramped up, and I'm not talking about Trump.
Yeah, I know.
You know, so, and literally are letting, it's like a type of brainwashing. And it's so in
Yes,
ourselves
it is.
that we don't even understand that we're complicit.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just crazy making.
I know.
Can
How do we
I
change
say
that?
something about
Yes.
that? There is something hopeful, you know, it's not just terrible.
Yes.
thing. 19 US senators
Mm-hmm.
voted for an arms embargo,
Yeah.
practically speaking. 19 for the
Mm-hmm.
first time ever. And it could be growing because when the Democrats are an opposition party, they can be a little feistier and they don't have to follow the Zionist Joe Biden.
5 years ago, it was 0, by the way.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, no.
So-
I mean,
so this is-
you know, and it's not just, it didn't just happen that they feel that way. It's because groups
Yeah.
have been calling and
Constituents.
educating the staff and having meetings with their representatives and senators.
And
Yes.
also, I think
So
also.
so that's us. We're doing that.
Appealing to
grassroots.
something that is very logical. We all have a logic when you have compassion. And to have that squelch is just the strangest
Can I
thing.
just mention, I just want to mention
Maddening.
something. Recently, thank you.
Take care, Dove.
Thank you.
Recently,
See you, Judith.
one of the State Department people, forgot his name, he's talking and they asked him, you know, all of the weapons that you are sending to Ukraine, and he slipped with the truth. What did he say? I think most people probably missed it. He said, it's good for our jobs.
Yes, right.
Yeah, State of the
I
Union.
can't believe it, he said it.
Yeah.
So
I mean, that's the
audacious.
truth.
Yep.
Audacious.
So
yeah.
it is. It's so the military-industrial complex. You know, to answer some of the question, why is the United States? It's behind the scenes. That is a huge factor. I think they sit with every president and say, "You shut your mouth. You are gonna. This is money for us." Seriously, I really believe there is a meeting behind the scenes.
It's sewn up, it's sewn up, it's
Yeah.
sewn up with.
But also, one thing important is, you know, I have supporting slides. I didn't want to subject it to it. Read Mearsheimer, John Mearsheimer. Read him, the Israeli lobby. That's a huge factor too. It was mentioned, but read his book. And also, you know, if you can get the names, you know, of the people that I attach, because you can really listen to them in 5 seconds. You just put Google, and you'll come up with all kinds of names, and you will learn a lot. You know, everybody here, I learn a lot. Sometimes Chris catches me. She says, "What are you doing?" I'm saying, "I'm listening to John Mearsheimer."
Yes, I've listened to him.
Yeah.
But many good ones.
There he is.
I think also,
Yes, thank you.
this is something that Chris mentioned on our way over here
Can you go
today.
up a little?
I think another thing that goes along with what you're saying, and that I think is just good to remember also when we're talking with other people, and I don't know how you bring it out, but one of the things Chris said that you reminded me of too is that we are so isolated as a country. We know that. I mean, what is it, like 7% of Americans have passports?
Yeah.
Which doesn't mean everyone should travel, but we think we're the center of the world, we think we're the greatest thing in the world, et cetera. And what we don't realize, especially in the past year, is how incredibly bad our reputation is, even compared to a year ago, worldwide. And I think that, now, a lot of people would say, who cares? You know, we're the best, whatever. But I think that it's just like what Israel is doing in Gaza is absolutely the worst for them, because they're done now. I mean, you know, they are in their present form, sooner or later, with what they've done. I mean, there's no pretending that we're this or that for Israel anymore. And I think it's the same for America, and it's part of what we're, for the U.S., I hate using that word America, that's the wrong phrase to use, because we're not America. But I think that's something to remember, that we have no idea, most people, what the rest of the world thinks of us.
That's why we have to do these deep dives. You know, the more discussions. You know, by the way, this is a good quote from John Mearsheimer. What, you know, people say, why are the Israelis starving the Palestinians? This is, I'm quoting him. Why are they killing the Palestinians? Why are they making Gaza unlivable like they did in 1948? It is very simple. They want to drive them out. That's what they really are after.
Which is also something that's even bigger, because once that land is available,
Yes.
it's going to be international companies going in and building it up again.
They
It's
already-
just like basically going in, creating
already
more,
doing that.
and then
Already.
the industrial complex comes in and builds it up, and who makes the money?
Yeah.
Again, it's follow the money.
You know,
I
even
hate to
Jared,
be so cynical, but
even
this
Jared
is the way
Kushner.
the damn world works right
even
now.
Jared Kushner said, "Oh, but they shut him up first." He
Oh,
said,
yeah, he
"Oh, we
was
could,
talking about
oh yeah, we
building
could
their-
build some really nice."
Yeah.
Resorts and-
They're unabashed.
You know, thank
But
you very much.
Think about what we can do, really. I think about always what we can do as individuals in this
Exactly,
regard. I mean, we can, I mean, at times people say, well, you know, what do? I protested, I wrote to my senator, I called their offices, and look at it, you know. I went to protest in Burlington or here and there. I am so tired, I am suffering from the genocide fatigue, but I can't do anymore. Whatever I do is not gonna help. And I think the point is, whatever you do is part of a global movement. And as an individual act, I mean, if every community, you know, looks at this and says, we cannot continue giving this money at the cost of our schools and our health. And if, you know, I say I don't want my money going, my IRA money going here and here and here and here, and if 1,000 people do that, if 2,000 people do that, if 100,000 do that, this is where the difference is. And I think we need to take those steps. Is talk about Palestine and commit ourselves to anti-apartheid, our individual selves to anti-apartheid, and do what takes to translate that commitment into action, to end our complicity. That's really, and now, of course, you know, sitting here sometimes, because like Pat said, you know, the US is not a place where political and social movements are so strong in that regard. But I mean, you look at what's happening in the UK, every single weekend, there are hundreds of thousands of people who are weekly protesting, weekly going out on boycott campaigns, talking at supermarkets, talking at chain stores and all this about boycott. Barclays, for example, had to shut its operation, Barclays, under its name, and they bought Tesco Bank in order to operate under that brand name. And once the activists discovered that trick, they targeted Tesco Bank. So here you go. This is where the action is, and this is where we can make a difference by mobilizing, by taking individual steps. Thank you so much. Thank you. And that's all on us individually.
So I think also speaking up, even when it's an individual conversation, instead of shying away from the popular narrative, because that is so powerful.
It's really powerful.
It is unbelievably powerful to speak up against the narrative that's on the media or whatever.
Right.
And to get courageous about that, not angry, but courageous.
I think to come back to Duncan's point, I know it's not about Trump by any means, but I think that those of us who generally are more on the left side than the right tend to think, oh, there's no way you can talk to people on the right about this. But actually there's a lot of common ground, and I think that's a
you know that, I know you do.
I'm not on the right, I'm not on the left anymore.
No, I left. I don't believe. I don't know where I fit anymore. But I think a lot of people, I'm so done.
I'm sure, yes.
As younger man.
Me even speaking up like that, I wouldn't have years ago.
I know.
I'm just not, because it's all the othering. I'm so sick.
Exactly.
And it's too easy, and that's the whole divide and conquer thing. And we're doing it in this
And they're
country,
doing it
and we're living it in this country.
And our leaders are doing it to control all of us.
Who is buying into it?
Exactly.
It's some of the most educated people that are buying into it.
No, absolutely, I totally agree.
You just
We just phone up. Yeah.
Sure, okay, all right.
Sure. I hope.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Take everything. Don't take the chairs.
Bigger than in the Bible.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's nice.
Really
We
good.
want to talk.
Yeah.
Especially after that election.
They were awesome.
Okay, yeah. Thank you for that. For the feedback. Sometimes there's so much to say, and sometimes you can talk for hours about this subject, but you still have
You did
to
sign our petition.
sort of like give yourself a time limit, so and also at the same time,
He's doubtful.
like how I told you know what I mean?
It's like the Cold War. People are like against
They
us.
ask to what they have heard.
Why?
Because, you have to ask the speaker, and the speaker is
Get out.
expert and all
Don't
this.
go there.
But the important thing is, like, what do you think of what you just
I
said?
think we had a good mix in there. You two awkward to talk about everybody.
Yeah. And I appreciate that by coming in. And that was a very good thing.
Mostly Henry, my dad.
His sound. Yeah, I didn't tweet around.
You guys,
I'm like, I'm gonna.
maybe you wanna,
Has nothing to do with it. Then it's all like.
you know,
That's just, I mean, for us real estate.
I know, well,
Yeah, I know, I was worried there would be
can he initiate something like this?